Ave Maria. A lot of you out there are praying for holy matrimony. A lot of you are praying for marriage. And a lot of you are not achieving this breakthrough. And so many of you out there are wondering why they are not making the breakthrough that they need for holy matrimony. So they are wondering, am I praying the wrong way? Is there a prayer which I need that I'm not praying so far that could help me to achieve what I need? Now you need to understand that to obtain holy matrimony is much more than a prayer. It is a lifestyle. So it needs a whole change of perspective, not just prayer, to get what you want. Now I'm going to run through about 10 reasons why you might not be getting what you're praying for if you're praying for holy matrimony. And then after those 10 points, I'm going to give you 10 ways how you can overcome these blocks and obtain the grace of holy matrimony. So you're welcome once again. So straight away, I'll get into this. Number one, and the main cause of blockages for holy matrimony is unconfessed mortal sin. A mortal sin is a sin that you commit willingly and deliberately. You know it's wrong, nobody is forcing you, but you still commit it. But especially sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. And the Catholic Church teaches us that there are 4 sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. Number one is willful murder. When we talk about willful murder, most of you will think you're exempt from this. But the worst case of willful murder is abortion. And abortion is terrible because marriage is primarily for reproduction. Marriage is for reproduction and then mutual love between the spouses. And abortion is against reproduction of children. So it is something that is opposed to marriage. And when we talk about abortion, we do not talk about, when we talk about the sin of abortion, we do not talk about only the person who went through the procedure. We also talk about the medic who did the procedure. You're equally guilty. We talk about the sponsor. We talk about the advisors. We talk about those who commanded the abortion to take place. For example, if you sleep with maybe somebody, maybe in your company, a subordinate, and you command them to abort, that is also a sin. We talk about those who kept quiet when this sin was going to take place. If you had a friend and they came to you for advice and they said they are thinking about abortion and you did not tell them that abortion is bad, you're also a participant in that sin. And that is one of the 4 sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. The second one is sodomy, and that is homosexuality and lesbianism. You might think this is not so common maybe here in Uganda, but in high schools, especially girls' schools, this is something that is very, very rampant. Most girls start doing it for fun. They'll have people they call maybe girlfriend jokingly. That is how they start. The third one is oppression of the poor. I'm not going to explain on that. And the last one is defrauding workers of their just wages. And this is especially when it comes to house helps, how you treat the people that are working in your domestic family, the maids, the shamba boys. If you do not pay these people what they deserve, then you're committing one of the 4 terrible sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. And so these 4 are part of the wider mortal sins. So I'm not going to give a whole list of mortal sins, but if you have an unconfessed mortal sin, on your conscience, then there's a high probability that this is what is blocking you from attaining the grace of holy matrimony. Point number 2, confessed sins that have not been atoned for. I'm not sure if I've made a video about this. I think I have. You can check through one of my other videos. But basically, sin has two consequences. One is eternal and one is temporal. The eternal consequence is suffering for eternity in hell. The temporal consequence is temporal suffering in this life. And if you do not suffer in this life, you will suffer in the next life, purgatory. So going for confession does not finish the consequence of sin. You must also do what they call atonement, to remove the scar that the sin has left. So that could also be something that is blocking you. You need to start satisfying for the sins that you take for confession. Point number 3, words, posts, jokes that are against marriage. And you need to understand that evil spirits are always accusing us before God. Whatever you say or do, whether you're joking or serious, the evil spirits demand strict justice from God. And you can read Revelation chapter 12 verses 10 to understand this point, and also Job chapter 1 verses 9 to 12. Revelation 12:10, Job chapter 1 verses 9 to 12. You'll understand how these spirits are always telling God how you don't deserve this and that, and they demand justice. And normally they are the ones who enforce the justice of God. So they could be the ones accusing you and then holding you for that injustice if you have not. So please be careful the things you say, whether you're serious or joking. Be careful about the things you post on social media. You might think it's a joke, but it is not a joke for the evil spirit who is before God accusing you. It is not a joke before Satan. Satan can use your words against you in front of God. Point number 4, we have addictions which make you spiritually not ready for marriage, especially the addictions that are related to sex, and that is masturbation and pornography and indecent dresses. Those are the main ones that I can think about. Masturbation, pornography, indecent dressing. If you're still addicted to these, it could be the reason why your grace of holy matrimony is being put on hold. Point number 5, inner wounds. Inner wounds are the wounds we get from 3 sources. Number 1 is original sin, number 2 is personal sin, and number 3 are the sins of others against us. So if you have inner wounds, you'll never be happy already in a relationship, because they create what they call a defensive structure, defensive mechanism. Your mind develops a defensive mechanism not to be hurt because you have been hurt in the past. And that fear, that defensive mechanism, makes you unable to experience a healthy and good relationship with another person. Point number 6, indecent dressing. I'll focus on this. Why? When you're dressed in a way, and this normally goes for ladies, although even men can dress indecently, but mainly it affects ladies. Now, when you dress indecently and somebody looks at you with lust, and remember what Jesus said, if you look at another person with lust, you have already committed adultery. So imagine by the time you move from town and back, how many men could have engaged in mental adultery with you. So remember, this adultery, because you are the cause of this scandal, the cause of this sin that these other people have committed. Because Jesus says, Jesus says sin will always be there, but woe unto the person who makes other people to sin. So this is a block for you that is preventing preventing you from achieving your dream. Point number 7, cohabitation. I'm not going to talk so much about this one because it is basically also opposed to marriage. It is like a wrong marriage, a false marriage, an evil marriage. Basically, marriage is a covenant between two parties, that is God on one side and a couple on the other side. On the other side, in cohabitation, there is no God. You only choose to stay in an adulterous relationship without God, and so that is a very, very big block. That is why most people who cohabit don't end up even marrying. Either you'll break up or you'll stay in that sinful relationship. However, it doesn't mean that if you're cohabiting, you'll never get married. I'm just giving you things that could be blocking your marriage so that you get a way of overcoming them and getting what you need, what you want, because I'm sure everyone wants holy matrimony. Nobody wants to stay in a cohabitation forever. Point number 8, lack of patience, which makes most people to do things their own way. For example, you are a lady, you're a young lady, and you're praying for holy matrimony, but you reach the age of 28 to 30s and you're not seeing anybody taking you before the altar, and you start panicking. So you start fearing menopause and the rest, and so you say, at least let me have a child. So you take things into your own hands and you leave out God. Now when you do that, you'll end up becoming a single mother. And some people think it is also fine to be a single mother. Trust me, it is not. As a person who is engaged in counseling, most of the people that come to me for prayers and help in getting holy matrimony are single mothers, people with kids 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are the people who want holy matrimony the most. So if you're still without a child, please do not be tempted to be a single mother. The same people that you're looking at as single mothers and okay are the same people who are praying even more than you for holy matrimony. Don't fall for that mistake. And if you're a single mother, it doesn't mean that you can't be married. You still can be married. And we'll go to the next point, which is point number 9, use of satanic articles to get either marriage or improve on sex. This also normally goes to my sisters, the ladies. Things like waist beads are satanic, and certain aspects of what we call marital counselors or singers who give you certain things like herbs and other advice on how to improve on your sex life in marriage. I'm not saying that marital counselors are totally bad, but I'm talking about those who specifically teach you how to improve your sex life in marriage, normally introduce you to lust, and the moment you take that lust into your life, you will never, it is going to be hard for you to get a good marriage partner or get that sacrament, because lust is a sin. And the last point is fornication and adultery, and I'm going to explain this. Please, if you have been sleeping, for example, with a married man or a married woman, that could be something that is blocking you because you are killing or you killed somebody's marriage, and this sin comes back to bite you. Or for example, if you sleep with every boyfriend that you get, it blocks your chances of being married. First of all, it will increase your inner wounds, because every time you sleep with somebody who doesn't marry you, every time you sleep with a person before marriage, you will get wounds, and these wounds will prevent you from getting married. And also the sin will also be another block. So fornication and adultery are very, very big blocks for you from getting into marriage. Now, those are the 10 points why you might not be getting the sacrament. Now, I'm going to give you 10 points on how you can overcome, no matter which situation you're in, whether you're a single mother, whether you're old, it doesn't matter. Point number 1 is you need deliverance from bondage. And when I talk about deliverance, I'm not talking about you spending the night in prayer, babbling in tongues. Deliverance, the only way that Satan can get you into bondage is through sin. So the only deliverance you need is deliverance from sin, and you can never get deliverance from sin unless you go for the sacrament of reconciliation, which some other people call the sacrament of penance or confession. So when you go before God and admit your sins, you are forgiven and you are delivered from that power that Satan had over you. Because as long as you're in sin, you are under the power of Satan. And the other way you can achieve deliverance, I always tell people there are 2 basic ways of achieving deliverance: going for confession and praying the rosary every day. Now, you need to understand the process of getting a valid confession, which I did a video on some time back. You can check on my channel. There is a video on how to do the sacrament of reconciliation in a valid way. But also, more importantly, it is very helpful for you, if you're praying for the sacrament of holy marriage, to do what we call a general confession. What is a general confession? Normally, confession, you think about the sins from the time you were last there before a priest in the sacrament. But the general confession is the confession of all your life. Why do you have to go back more than where you left it when you went for confession? It is because there are some things you are not aware that were sinful. Maybe you have learned them in this video and you have never confessed them, and so it could be blocking you, because the reason number 1 was unconfessed mortal sins. So you could have learned about some sins. For example, you didn't know that assisting somebody to get an abortion is also a sin. So when you're thinking about, when you're doing an examination of conscience, you go even beyond the last time you went for confession, and then you confess all these sins. Now, the reason is, whenever you're before a priest in the sacrament of confession, telling him those sins, and remember, a priest is just standing in persona Christi, in the person of Christ, you're really telling them to Christ, and you're getting healing for those sins. So you're being delivered from the power of the devil. So please do a general confession and you'll be delivered. Pray the rosary every day. Point number 2, be the spouse that the spouse of your dreams would want. Now, here you imagine, think about the person that you'd want to be married to. In your head, take a mental picture, and then imagine the person that this person would want in terms of character, in terms of action, in terms of speech, in terms of dress. Then be that person. Eventually, these things will work out themselves and you'll get that person. Point number 3, you need to learn to deal with your inner wounds. You cannot move on from a relationship where you've not healed and you get into another and you expect to be happy. These other wounds will still, like I said, inner wounds create a defensive mechanism. That is why you'll meet somebody who will say, "Me, I'm tired of men." It is not that the person is tired of men, but it is a defensive mechanism because men have had that person. And with that attitude, you'll never get into a serious and healthy relationship. So you need to first get healed. You will never be open for marriage when you still have inner wounds. All men are dogs. Those are symptoms of inner wounds. Every man cheats. You can still get a man who doesn't cheat. But as long as you have that attitude because of those wounds, even when he doesn't cheat, remember, you're going to think that he's cheating, and so you'll never be happy in a relationship. You'll always be assuming things that the person has not done based on your past experiences. So please take time Get healed. And how do you get healed from these inner wounds? Prayer again, most importantly, the reception of the sacraments, especially the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. And then you have to be open-minded. Don't close your heart to people because you've been hurt in the past. Be vulnerable to God, and He's going to heal you. He's going to touch you and heal you, and then you will be fine. Point number 4, devotion to Our Lady, the Blessed Virgin Mary. She is the one who heals inner wounds, as we can see from the book of Luke, when she went to visit Elizabeth, and she healed Elizabeth of her wounds because she went with Christ. So whenever you're meditating, for example, on the second joyful mystery, which is the visitation, pray for inner healing from Our Lady, and she's going to heal you. Point number 5 is you need a devotion to Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph, when you read the litany of Saint Joseph, you find out that he's the head of the Holy Family. The Holy Family was the model family. It's the best family, the happiest family that has ever been there, or that will ever be there. And so we have to model our families on the Holy Family. And Saint Joseph was the head of the Holy Family, as we read from the litany. Please develop a strong devotion to Saint Joseph. He's also called the pillar of families, also from his litany, and the terror of demons. If you want to know how to be devoted to Saint Joseph, I have another video on that, how to be devoted to Saint Joseph. Please look it up on the channel and watch it. You will be sorted. Point number 6, be patient and trust in God. As long as you're praying, as long as you're fighting sin in your life, as long as you're doing your best, you have no reason to worry. The marriage will come. Do not worry about your age. Do not worry about what your family members are saying. Do not worry about what society thinks or says. You can still get a holy and good marriage at 35 plus when you trust in God. There's no point in rushing for marriage. Then 2 years later, you're divorced or you're a single mother. I'm sure that everyone who is praying for marriage is not praying to be a single mother or to live in hell, in a marriage which is hell. So you're in purgatory now in a single life, and then you get married and it becomes hell. Marriage is supposed to be heaven. You're supposed to be happy. Marriage is a mirror of eternal life, where we shall be eternally united to God. It's not supposed to be something that makes you stressful, that drives you crazy, you're unhappy. So instead of rushing for that, please be patient. As long as you're advancing in your spirituality, you'll get every other thing. The marriage will come, trust me. Have faith. Read about stories of people like Elizabeth in the Bible. There are so many stories in the Bible where people could not give birth, but God worked miracles, and these people did what was unthinkable. God can still do the same for you. You have no reason to rush. Have trust in Him. Be patient. Wait for His time. Point number 7, please avoid sex before marriage. Why? First of all, this is a mortal sin. You are going to get what we call covenantal curses. As Christians, we are under a covenant. A covenant is giving of self to the other. We as Christians, we give our lives to God, and He says, as long as you become my people, I'll be your God. So God is faithful, and He always keeps His part of the covenant. But when you sin, you have broken the covenantal vows. You've broken the baptismal vows. When you were baptized, you made a vow to reject Satan and all his works. And sex before marriage is the work of the devil. So when you sin, you call upon yourself a covenantal curse that is going to make you suffer. It is not God being a punishing God. This is what people think. I'll give you an example. If I tell my child not to go out in the dark, and this child refuses and goes out in the dark, and then they fall in a ditch, that pain of falling in a ditch will not be because I'm a punishing father. It will be because they refuse to listen to my advice. And that is why God sets us rules. Do not do this, because he knows it's bad. By the time I tell a child, do not go out at night, and I make it a rule in my family, it means I know the dangers of going out at night. So when the child refuses and then faces danger when this child goes out, the danger will not be because I'm a bad father. It will be because they are a bad child. They refuse to listen to my advice and my rules. So whenever you sin, you must pay, because you have broken the covenant with God. And whenever you keep the covenant with God, you incur blessings upon yourself. Also, secondly, every time you have sex before marriage, I think I talked about this before, you get inner wounds, and the more inner wounds you get, the more you'll never be able to enjoy a healthy relationship. Point number 8, please stop blaming others on your situation and work on your spirituality. A lot of you would have loved me to tell you that you are not married because your ancestors made covenants with the devil, and so it is not you, it is your ancestors. Or maybe you have this auntie who doesn't like you, or a neighbor who is not happy with your progress in your family, and so they are bewitching you. Yes, these things can happen because people can make pacts with the devil. However, for all of this to take place, there must be an opening for the demons to work upon you, and this opening is always sin. So even if your ancestors made all sorts of covenants and pacts and whatever they did that you'll never get married, as long as you're not sinning, these will all be broken. And especially sins like abortion. When you abort, because abortion is child sacrifice, you're pouring the child of an innocent infant, you are renewing those covenants that your ancestors made. So as long as you avoid sin, whatever your ancestors did will not. It is the same thing with witchcraft. If somebody goes and bewitches you, and yes, I know that witchcraft exists because I cannot believe in God without believing in the devil. So if somebody goes to bewitch me, as long as I'm avoiding sin, that witchcraft will be useless. But if I sin, especially these mortal sins, especially the terrible ones, like the ones I told you, the ones that cry out heaven for virgins, if you're committing these sins, if you're living in these sins, then all these curses and everyone bewitching you, the demons will get an entry point into your life. The devil or the demons cannot get an entry point into your life minus sin. So at the end of the day, it is all about you. Avoid sin, and all this will never affect you. Continue sinning, and everybody who is bewitching you and all the covenantal, pacts made by your ancestors will come back to haunt you. So basically, it is not about your ancestors. It is not about the other auntie who doesn't like you. It's not about that neighbor that you have a feud with in the village. It is not about the old woman. It is about you. If you avoid sin, none of this touches you. If you go for confession regularly, you're breaking all these things. Point number 9, please be open, be polite to people that you meet. God is a miracle working God, but in most cases, God likes to use the natural order to make things happen. So that means if you're praying for somebody who is going to go with you before God on the altar, most probably God is going to use somebody you're going to meet either at work or in the other groups that you're in, or on social media. So if you're rude and you cannot be praying, you cannot be crying out to God for a husband, for example, and then somebody greets you and you're rude, you do not want to talk to them, you're blocking people left, right, center. And I'm not saying that everyone who approaches you are supposed to But as long as people are not saying anything that is out of order, please be polite. You don't know how God is using these people to come into your life. So be open, be polite. You do not know where your marriage partner is. It could be this gentleman who's inboxing you on Facebook. God can use that as a way. So somebody inboxes you and says, hello, how are you? Blocked. And then you every night you're before God, but God, what did I do? I've never gotten somebody interested to me. Yes, you're chasing the people that God is sending. Please be open. As long as somebody is not going out of boundaries, it is okay for people to say hi to you, to want to be friends with you at work, else people you meet in town, in the supermarket, in the bank queue. Please be open, be polite to people. That is how God is going to use people to come to you. God will not send a man from heaven like rain to come to you. God is not going to send a man with a tag on the forehead saying potential husband. You will meet a stranger and then you'll become friends. So if you're not making new friends, you think the friends you have are enough, and then you're praying to God, oh my God, I need somebody to spend my life with, then you're not helping yourself. And the last point is, I think by everybody who has been following this video must now see that the main issue is avoiding sin, because sin is the number one cause of everything, the covenantal curses, the blockages, everything. So please, it is in your best interest to avoid sin. Sin is especially mortal sin. And I explained the mortal sin. It involves three things. One, grave matter. Two, you do it willingly. And three, deliberate knowledge. So if you're not fighting sin in your life, then it is not actually just about marriage. Every other grace from God will be hindered by a mortal sin. So if you are avoiding sin, if you are fighting sin, because it is one thing to know that mortal sin is bad, and another to get out, especially if you've been, for example, addicted. If you've been watching porn for the last 10 years, even after watching this video and you go for confession, don't think you're going to cut the addiction. Sometimes it's going to take years, but you have to be fighting. You must be doing your best to avoid it. Do not promote sin and then cry to God for his graces. You are breaking the covenant with God. Please avoid sin. Do not promote sin. Do not justify sin. I can understand if you're fighting sin. That is very good.